Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Copilot Compass. We're glad you joined us after we were off last week enjoying the last bit of summer, but happy to be back with you. And as always, I have the pleasure of being joined by my esteemed colleague, fellow Copilot enthusiast, and our resident smart guy, Logan.
Thanks, Grant. Happy to be here.
Logan, let's go ahead and tell the folks a little bit about what we're going to talk about in today's episode.
Yeah, so as always, we'll get started with our question of the week, and then we'll get into our topic, which is Copilot Prompt-a-Thons. We're going to be focusing on Copilot, obviously, but we're going to kind of talk about Prompt-a-Thons in general, too. Because it's, a super useful tool for lots of things. Make sure you stay tuned to the end for a sneak preview of what we have coming up next, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment.
All right, let's dive in.
Let's do it. Okay, let's get started with our question of the week. And remember, you can submit your own question either by leaving a comment on this video or by emailing the email address in the description. So this week, our question is, what are the risks of over-relying on Copilot for decision-making?
Yeah, no, I think this is one, we see it a lot of times with users, like they start to see a lot of value from it, Copilot. They're seeing its capability, and then you just get a little bit over reliant on it. And you never want to just say, hey, research this topic, copy, paste, send to my CEO. You want to not over reliant, especially for decision making. I think a good way to look at it is it's a voice in the room, but it's not the only voice in the room. It's a great tool to help you with analyzing large data sets, recalling information, taking information from a variety of sources and helping analyze those situations. But the key word there is helping analyze. You want to use it as a tool in your decision making. It's just not there yet as far as replacing human thought, especially with large strategy. But again, that's not to say it shouldn't be involved in very high level, very high value business decisions. You can certainly leverage it to consult you, bring new opinions on things. And again, the one thing that's helpful for me is I might have a question that comes up, and instead of me having to take a bunch of time to research into it or to dive deep or try to find information or maybe bother somebody like Logan to help me find info, I can use Copilot as a tool. I think a good way to think about really any LLM or any AI tool is it's like asking somebody for a book review that only read the cliff notes. Sometimes it gets everything right, and sometimes it adds lightsabers into Pride and Prejudice. So you want to, make sure that what it's giving you is accurate. But that's kind of, I guess, my thoughts on it. Again, it's a tool, not a decision maker. But Logan, what do you have to add to this?
Yeah, just kind of going off those risk mitigation techniques. I think a big one is checking the sources that Copilot gives you. So,
Yeah.
if there's an answer that, you're maybe a little bit unsure about, or just anything you just want to double check, make sure, hey, this is 100% correct. Just ask Copilot for its sources and go in there and see where it's coming from. You might find even better information there. A lot of times you could just be using Copilot to kind of find sources, maybe the same way you'd go to a Wikipedia page and go look at the sources because that's where, all the real information is. And this is just kind of a summary. So I think that's a good, uh, tool to keep in mind when you're trying to mitigate risk.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good important step. I think, sometimes I've talked to people about that and they say, well, hey, if you're saying Copilot's helping me save time, but then you're saying I have to spend more time to fact check those sources.
Yeah.
Well, the level of depth at which you go into that probably depends on the importance of the decision you're making or the information you're sharing. If I'm looking up something quickly for somebody else on my own project team, and it's, very low impact thing, I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time. I might just read through it, make sure it makes logical sense, and then send it over. But, if it's something that's like a huge research article that's being sent to, our executive leadership team, then yeah, that's where you're going to want to take the steps. And it's really not a super time consuming step. You can just ask Copilot, hey, reference cite your sources, or where did you get this information from? And, again, if it's high visibility, you might want to go actually, go through, check those links and make sure that, skimming to those points that were discussed. But yeah, I guess net of the whole thing, check your source, always double check, and use it as a tool, not a decision maker. But
Yep.
I'm excited to talk about Prompt-a-thons. I think this is a really great adoption and enablement tool for organizations. So let's jump right into that.
Let's do it.
All right, so prompt-a-thons are something that's definitely getting to be a little bit more popular, but certainly not as popular as a hackathon. I think most of our audience, even a non-technical folks are going to be at least familiar with a hackathon, but prompt-a-thon is basically that, but for prompt engineering, for coming up with prompts that make sense for your real-world business problems. Now, we like these for a number of reasons. One is it's not just training. It's requiring people to actually roll up their sleeves, get their hands dirty, play around with the tools, and that's great. But it's not even, the other value here is it's not a lab environment that you're working in. It's your own environment. These are real business problems you're solving with real files and real information that the team deals with on a regular basis. So definitely great from a training and enablement perspective. These are also fun events. I mean, you can do a lot of additional things here, like provide some lunch to the team members that are attending. There's like a competition that comes at the end where you can do prizes and stuff like that. And so it's really a good employee engagement experience in addition to getting the value of the training you provide. So what is a hackathon? We are going to there's lots of flavors here, and it certainly isn't a one size fits all engagement. We're going to talk today mostly about Microsoft's approach to hackathon or prompt-a-thons rather, where they are kind of using a full day type of approach. We've done them in as little as, about 2.5 hours. But with those, shorter prompt-a-thons, it's typically people that have already gone through training. They're already using the tools. It's kind of like trying to go from 100 level to 200 level. If you are starting from ground zero and working your way up to, that 200, you're probably do get a lot of benefit out of being a full day. So we'll talk to you a little bit we'll show you actually some slides from Microsoft on how they recommend structuring out the day or a sample of what that day might look like. But before we get to that, I mean, what is it? So this can be done virtually. I personally think it's a lot better in person if you can do it. It's typically size of this can really waver quite a bit. You're going to end up splitting the audience into teams, typically by business unit or business function. We find that ideal team size to be somewhere right around 5 and 6, somewhere in there. If you get less than that, then you end up, it's just not a big enough group to bring new ideas in. But if you get more than, 7 or 8, it gets pretty easy in that type of a group scenario for people to kind of shut down and let other members of the team sort of carry the team. And that's not a specific issue with a prompt-a-thon. That's an issue with just any group training or group activity. So very interactive and collaborative session. And you want to set that expectation with people right up front. It's not like we're telling people, hey, you can't respond to any emails for the next 8 hours. You tell them, hey, if you need to step out, you need to step out, but be upfront about them that, hey, when you're there, we need you to be where your feet are, be involved in the engagement and, work as a team. So what are you going to do? Again, at the start of it kind of depends. If you've got a more advanced group and you're looking to just get new prompts identified, new scenarios and new use cases identified, then what you might do is just kind of start with laying the groundwork for the, hackathon type of engagement and get rolling right into that hackathon. More commonly, you're doing this with a group that's just gotten licenses, or maybe they've had them for a while, they're not using them. Really good one too for Copilot Chat, even to use, those users there to get that, if you're not seeing a lot of utilization there. And in those cases, you might want to spend, a couple hours at the beginning of the session with almost like a training session where you kind of talk about what is Copilot, what can it do, what can't it do, and then especially important to cover prompt engineering or how to structure a prompt. We've talked about that a couple episodes ago. There's a lot of good material out there now, but making sure that they know what a good prompt looks like is going to be really essential when they get into the actual like kind of hackathon activities. What are the goals of this? The number one goal is that you're going to come out of this with what Microsoft calls like a hack pack, or like a group of use cases or a group of prompts that can be applied tomorrow for that business unit. So it's kind of like a set of things that you discover along the way. Now, who's involved in this? There are a few different role types. So one is obviously you have the employees, like we've seen people do this where it's like, hey, we're going to bring 30 members of our HR team in here. Maybe you kind of have subunits within HR. So those are going to be kind of your groups. You could also, at like more of an SMB, SMC size company, you might actually have like, okay, our 5 members of HR are here, our 5 members of IT are here, our 10 members of account management are here. You're bringing in really everybody. So it kind of just depends. But beyond that user group, you've got 2 key, or I guess 2.5 key roles. So first is going to be Copilot coaches. So hopefully your organization already has some people that are pretty tech savvy or up to speed with Copilot. They're using it well. They're kind of your champions. So you got to have some people playing those roles. They're going to be basically going around and doing kind of supporting the teams as they're trying to identify these prompts. Like they might come up with some things like, hey, is this possible or not? Or is there a way for me to get to this result? And what those Copilot coaches are going to be helpful. The other role that you're going to need, and you don't necessarily have to identify these people before, is going to be your business coaches. So these are, Copilot coaches, technical expertise on Copilot. Business coaches are your folks that are subject matter expertise on that business process level. So more experienced people, more senior people, your leadership, but definitely people that have had a lot of hands-on experience because they really need to know those business processes. Now, I said you don't necessarily have to identify these in advance. You could be doing that sort of as you split the team, split the teams into groups. Really what this person's doing is, well, like the Copilot coach is helping with technical questions. This person's also helping with questions on the business process. So, if there's teams not quite clear on some upstream, downstream type of things, this person can coach there. But really the main goal of that business coach is going to be to keep the group on track, because it, can derail itself. So they're kind of like serving as a moderator type of thing there. The last role you're going to need is judges. So at the end, you're going to judge the teams. Not a hard requirement here, but I think it's fun. This is a really great opportunity too, if you can throw a little extra budget at it, to do some kind of fun awards. It doesn't have to be expensive. I mean, people will compete for, a bag of marshmallows on a lot of cases, but something kind of fun or creative. Some fun ones that we've done have been, like if it is a group that's hybrid or on site, that maybe there's some kind of a gold star magnet that goes on the back of the monitors for the week, or they get a chance, if you guys, like, maybe everyone orders lunch on Wednesdays for the whole team, maybe that team again gets, the winning team gets to pick what the lunch might be, whatever the case might be. It doesn't need to be a big investment. But all right, so we've talked holistically about what a Prompt-a-Thon looks like. One thing I think, when we talk with people about this, it's a little bit hard to conceptualize what the day actually looks like. So we're going to show you a few slides from Microsoft on what the day is structured like, and then we're going to show you some examples of what's going to be produced. So excited to share those with you. Let's get into it. All right, so I promised we'd show you what a sample day might look like here. And you will see a note on the right here. We talked a little bit about, like, hey, if you've got a little bit more advanced users that you don't need the training for, you're going to jump right into the hack. It says, leave at least 2.5 to 3 hours. I think 2.5 is plenty for the hack. But, that's what they're recommending here. So this is what, if you look at the left side, this is a full day version of the hack or Prompt-a-Thon. You're starting out, give a half hour for people to roll in, get some coffee, do a quick welcoming, make sure everybody's set up. And then you kind of do I won't read each one of these, but you're going to basically do some sessions on what is Copilot, some training, maybe if there's like certain gaps you guys have recognized or areas that people aren't using it. If you're fully M365 licensed Copilot, you might want to cover some of those scenarios there, but you can really do whatever you want training wise. The big key here, though, do make sure you cover prompt structuring if you haven't already gone over that with the users. And even if you have, super recommend revisiting that topic, because it's really essential for them as they get into the the hack. Then you'll see here that there's kind of a break to set up your teams. You do the hack. They've split it up here into two sections. I do think that's a good idea. Just 2 hours with a group is a long time to be with the group consecutively. So kind of giving them a break in the middle for them to sort of refresh, come back after that lunch break with some fresh new ideas is a good thing, and kind of digest what was covered in the first part of the hack. Um, then there's some team awards. We'll show that in a moment here. So we'll go ahead and show what the actual outcome looks like. So there's a few different things that we're going to look at here. You can do one of them. You can do all of them. They're all valuable in their own ways. So this is what we call like a prompt catalog or prompt cards. This is essentially you're kind of coming up with the scenario here, and then that box in the middle is the actual prompt itself. So you're kind of having this saved. You can templatize this, save it in like a group OneNote or a wiki, something like that, so that people don't have to try to remember it off the top of their head. But you're kind of writing out that exact quote in there, or the exact prompt rather in there. This one's all developed on this company writing a blog post, so we've kind of populated it in here for you to see what a completed version looks like. But that's the gist. Kind of quick title, what's the use case, quick sentence or two explaining that use case, and then lastly the prompt there going in the box. In this case, they've attached in like, hey, where within what M365 product are we doing it? But obviously you don't necessarily need to, especially if you're using Copilot Chat, where you're just using the chat interface. Now, this one I should have opened with, so my apologies, but I think this one is a great one to go first. So especially like if you're splitting up everybody by their business unit or by their function, it's to start by taking a look at what are the things that we actually do. What are those activities that we are completing on a regular basis? So this one's written on enterprise communications team, but you know, there's basically blank little boxes in here, or square, kind of these little rectangles that you're going to go in and you're going to put in, okay, what are those activities? Because once you kind of have this as a framework, this will allow you to then kind of use this thought to go in and build out those use cases where you look at, okay, we just learned what Copilot can do. Now let's take a look at these scenarios and see where they might apply. So again, recommend doing that one first. Now, this is a little bit more in-depth one. We love this one if you're looking at trying to build agents, but it's also really good even for more advanced prompts or things that are maybe more impactful. So this is a deeper dive into those little prompt tiles that we looked at a moment ago. But this is, basically a more complete version. So what you're doing here, we'll still at the top left, as someone in. So it's, hey, what's the role for this particular one? And then so what is it that you need to achieve in the process? Doesn't have to be only Copilot related tasks, but what does the whole process look like? And then it's going to show using. So it's, what am I going to use? So it's mentioning here Outlook to send email campaigns out and ask for feedback, Word to write articles. So like, what are the tools that we're going to use here? And then looking at the right side here, I'm going to know this is successful when. So what does success look like? A lot of times it's going to be time savings or efficiencies realized, but it could be accuracy. It could be making something more robust or more elaborate, more engaging, whatever the case might be. But, we should always define success here with these prompts. And then this last section here in the lower right is the value Copilot provided me in completing this job. And then it's kind of, okay, what's the value there? So we've defined the success, and then what is the value of that success? Now, getting even more into like the business value down here is doing a rough estimation here. Now, this can be something too, like, if you're trying not to lock people into a room for 2.5 hours, you maybe do like a 90 minutes and then have this kind of be a follow-up item that maybe even that business coach takes up and says, hey, I look at all the top sections everybody completed, and then I'm going to do this estimate. But this is a very simple, clean, and easy way to calculate the actual, like, what is the actual business value in the terms of time savings. So it's, how many hours per week are spent on the task? What's the percentage of efficiency on that task that we just, outlined in the above? how many workers are using it, how many employees are going to be, is this particular scenario going to apply to, and then it, calculate that value. This is saying 12 hours saved per week. So great efficiency with this particular one for preparing a blog post. Okay. So those are the items you complete. Now, Microsoft has this material. It's publicly available. They have like a hack pack that comes with those user materials. They also have a full overview deck for you to kind of go through some of the training they recommend if you're doing that full day version. So go check that out. The last thing we'll touch on with Prompt-a-thons here is the judging at the end. Again, it's not a hard requirement. I much prefer to do these with this, at least some kind of a reward recognition thing at the end. So the way that this would typically work is each business unit or each group is going to come up. They're going to stand in front of the room. They're going to present their findings. Now, why this is good is one, obviously, they spend a lot of time working on these, so it's cool to give them a chance to show off in front of everybody. But it also gives the other business units a chance to hear what they came up with. And they're going to find, obviously they don't do the same job, but they're going to find one or two things that kind of inspire some inspiration for their own processes. So as a scoring system, you can do this any way that you want. This is a great outline for Microsoft here, but this is a simple one. You just have your judges rank on these 5 categories: innovation, impact, feasibility or practicality, the prompt excellence, and, their presentation style. And rate each of these on a scale of 1 to 5, and then kind of combine the judges together. So again, good scoring system. Really like if you've got some extra budget, tie this into some kind of reward. Doesn't have to be big. Even a small reward goes a long way. So hopefully you found some of this valuable. Again, Microsoft has this publicly available. Download those packs. Really great activity to drive Copilot adoption at your organization. In today's Journey of the Copilot Compass, we talked to you guys about Prompt-a-thons. Showed you how they work, talked to you about the value of them, and shared some tips and tricks and best practices along the way.
Yeah, they're a really cool process, and it's hopefully something you can bring to your own business. And if you enjoyed, please leave us a like, subscribe, and comment, and let us know what you'd like to see next. And remember, we have Q&A sessions every episode, so please give us those questions. And remember, new episodes come out weekly on Tuesdays.
Yeah, and next week we are going to be back kind of on our weekly cadence, but we're going to talk about preparing for a Teams meeting. So, or I guess it could be an in-person meeting, but we've all been in those scenarios. Got a meeting coming up that you didn't prep enough for. So Copilot's a really great tool to help with that and kind of make you walk into the meeting seem like you were well prepared, even if you didn't allocate the time for it. So excited to share that one with you. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.